Much like we saw the run-up in home prices during the last couple of years with this insane housing market boom, we also saw a similar story when it comes to rentals. Rent prices have shot up dramatically, especially now that people are looking for rentals because they can't afford to buy. However, now things are starting to turn around, just like we've been talking about with the for sale market when it comes to housing. We've already seen nationwide home prices coming down on average by 6%. And when you look at some particular markets, we're seeing prices go down as much as 9% in certain areas, like San Jose, California, for example. But today, I want to focus a lot on rentals because that's one thing that is not talked about nearly as much on a lot of real estate channels. And since there's a lot to cover with the changing rental market, I wanted to fill you guys in with what's going on out there, because I think that the changes that are coming to the rental market are about to flip the entire rental market upside down. Just like we're seeing things slowly start to shift into a buyer's market for buyers, I think we're slowly going to see a similar transition when it comes to rentals, but it's coming a little bit later than the for sale market. So for example, just now there was a report that came out saying that rental demand has now hit a 13-year low. So that is pretty insane, guys, considering when you see just what happened with prices everywhere and how hard it was to find a rental. Doesn't matter where you live. You know, it was just crazy for the longest time. But RealPage, a company that tracks rental data, they determined that in the third quarter of 2022, rental demand has literally dropped to its lowest level that we've seen since 2009. So that is very significant. And if we just look back, I don't want to keep bringing this up, but it's just funny, you know, because there's so many articles and experts and even people in the comments that say, oh, this is nothing like 2008. It's going to be totally different. But yet we're seeing all of these signs that are reminiscent of this time period, including now rental demand being as low as it was back then in 2009. I mean, is that a coincidence, guys? I don't think it is, you know? I think all of this is happening because we are going through a very similar situation that we did during the last housing crash, but this time around, the dynamics of what's causing it and how this is going to play out is going to be different. It's not going to be the same story, but we do have a lot of similarities between this time and last time. So that's one thing that I'm noticing. And the funny thing about this is that rental demand especially went down in the summer, which is typically the time of year when demand for rents goes up the most. And that's what should be setting off the red flag for anybody who is maybe looking at buying an investment property or something right now, because whatever you see properties renting for right now very well may be lower in like a year from now, or maybe even 6 months from now. And here's another piece of evidence that this is not looking good, guys. According to RealPage, the company that tracks this data, they've been tracking rental data for 30 years. And they say that the third quarter of 2022 is the worst quarter ever in the past 30 years since they've been keeping track for rental demand. So what does that tell you? You know, one thing that a lot of people think, including myself, I was thinking this as well, that, well, as less people are able to buy, more people are going to rent. And that's exactly what happened last time during the last housing crash. But like I just said, this time things are going to be different. And one way that it's different, and one thing that is much different than last time, is rent prices this time are through the roof. Last time during the housing crash, there was no shortage of available and cheap rentals, guys. Even here in Miami. I shared with you guys recently in the condo collapse video about, I was paying $1,000 a month back in those days for a 1-bedroom, 1.5 bath here in Miami, with parking, with a balcony, with a partial ocean view. Fast forward to 2022, that same apartment now would be renting between $2,200 to $2,400 a month. That's more than double. That's insane. So that's what's different this time around. And so one reason that a ton of people aren't flocking to rentals like we saw in the last housing crash is because it's no longer an affordable option in many areas. Because according to Apartment List, on average, the rent prices are up 25% across the board, guys. And that's, putting it mildly, depending on where you live. Like here in Miami, rent prices are more like they're up like 40 to 50% in a year. So, that's just a national average. But according to Apartment List, which is another company that tracks this rental data, they are doing surveys of people finding out what's going on, right? And a lot of them are saying that they're moving back in with family, they're moving in with friends, and they're saving the money on the rent, which to me is extremely smart, guys. If there's ever been a good time to do this, it's right now. This is a signal to landlords and the overall rental market that we have reached the limit, okay? We've reached the actual price limit of what people can and are able to pay or willing to pay for rentals. And according to this article that I'm citing here, renters are now willing to pull out of the rental market in order to save the money because costs have gone up so dramatically. So that's where we're at right now with things. Happy Halloween, by the way. We have a ton of cool Halloween decorations around here. Look at this werewolf. How awesome does that look? That must have taken some effort to put that thing up. It's got to be like 12 feet tall. It's insane. I'm sure later at night this is going to scare the crap out of all the kids. Super cool. They got the red rum thing up there. Super cool. Some of you might know that I have invested in real estate in the past, and I still think that real estate is one of the best investments that anyone can make in their lifetime. However, right now, I don't think is a great time to be investing in real estate, not only because prices are ridiculous and the interest rates are crushing any type of profit you would make from a property, but going over what we just talked about with less tenants willing to pay these prices, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, we're seeing prices come down now for rentals as well. But that's what scares me about investing in real estate right now, because you're getting attacked from all angles, guys. Think about this. You are buying a property that's likely to go down in value in the near future. You're paying interest rates that are crushing the deal unless you are paying cash, okay? And then you have to contend with more vacant rentals coming on the market, which is going to drive rental prices down. So whatever you run your numbers on today might not hold true in a year from now, and you could end up losing money. You can turn your property that is an asset, your rental property right now, can be flipped into being a liability basically overnight if this trend continues forward. As someone who is very interested in investing in more real estate in the future, guys, I just feel like now is not the right time. And the thing about Lear Capital is they are a physical gold and silver company. So you can buy physical gold and silver directly from them, and you can either place it in an IRA investment account if you wish, or you can just take possession of it and have it delivered to your house and store it safely wherever you please. And to be clear, I have been a buyer of gold and silver before the pandemic and before all of this madness started, because it's something that has been money for well over 5,000 years of human history, and it still is money today as of 2022. And right now, I personally just like gold and silver as a better investment, or at least the very minimum, a way to save and protect your wealth. And like I was just mentioning in the real estate example, you could buy a rental property, and if the rents continue to go down, if your cash flow margins are already very low, you now could have a liability on your hands. And that's another great thing about gold and silver that a lot of people don't realize. There's no counterparty risk when you own gold and silver. So when you take possession of your physical metals from Lear Capital, that gold and silver will be your asset and it will not be someone else's liability. But that's not the case when you own an investment property, for example. So you have to be thinking about different ways to just protect your wealth right now. And gold and silver for me is one of my favorite ways to do it. So if you're interested, give Lear Capital a call at 1-800-601-5430, or you can use my special link in the description below, learmb.com, and pick up some physical gold and silver for yourself today. Now let's look at some more examples of what I was just talking about, guys. There was another article out today talking about how rents are starting to stagnate in 4 out of every 5 US cities. So that's almost everywhere. So yes, it's just like the regular purchase market for housing. Can you still find markets where prices are still going up and there's still bidding wars? Absolutely. Can you still find rental markets where prices are still on the rise and inventory is low? Of course you can. But the overall trend is that things are starting to return to somewhat of a norm. We've now seen 2 months in a row where rental prices are incrementally coming down, and it's not by a lot. And I know all the naysayers are going to say, well, Michael, it's still way too expensive, you know, just like the housing market. I get it, guys, but all of this takes time. You know, the prices for rent and the prices for homes for sale did not shoot through the roof literally from one day to the next, okay? It all started whenever we had the lockdowns, and then it progressed from there over the next couple of years. It did not happen overnight. So don't expect it to go in reverse overnight. You know, have some realistic expectations, because in October, you know, the month's almost over here, it's Halloween, the median rent for a 1 and 2 bedroom apartment fell by 0.8 and 0.7%, okay, from September. So almost 1% in 1 month. Just like we're seeing the housing prices, you know, on average, they're falling about 2% per month right now. And this is the first time in 2 years that we have seen declines in rent. So that's why I'm telling you, you have to get your expectations set in reality, because this is only just now beginning. So it's going to take time for it to continue to drop further, and nobody knows how far it will drop. But I think it's safe to say, as we're moving deeper into this recession and the economy starts to get worse, we see more people getting laid off, we see more people saying no to these high rent prices, moving in with family, etc. I think it's safe to say it's going to continue to fall for at least another year, just like the regular housing market. And this set of rental data that we're talking about is coming from Zumper, which I cited in another recent video for some rental data. They're saying in half of those markets, so 50 out of 100 markets that they track, they've seen rental prices come down over the past couple of months. And in 90% of the markets, the prices either came down or remained flat. So almost only 10%, that leaves you guys, 10% of the rental markets across the entire country are actually seeing gains right now. Right now, the 2 biggest cities that are seeing the biggest rental declines are New York City. They saw from September to October, rental prices drop 2.3%, and San Francisco saw rental prices drop 2.6%. And that's just 1 month, guys. And yes, I know those are the most expensive areas in the whole country. I get it, you know? I don't need to hear that. I know that. And so does everybody else that watches this. But that's not the point. The point is, you're going to see the decreases in the largest cuts come in the markets that are the most overvalued first. And then it trickles down into other markets eventually, because this is a trend that once it starts, pretty much can't be stopped. You know, it starts to happen as a wave. And only the most fundamentally sound markets out there, meaning that the wages in that market are attached to reality for what people can actually pay in the area, those are the only areas during this whole downturn that are likely to stay pretty much the same when it comes to rental prices and home prices. But even those places will not be immune. And the reason is layoffs. And that throws a big kink into everything. And if people cannot pay the bills, they're not going to be able to pay the rent. They won't be able to pay the mortgages. So, of course, guys, I don't hope that anyone gets laid off. But we are hearing all these stories and announcements of the coming layoffs by the end of this year. So And plus, the Fed is literally determined to increase unemployment right now. So they want you to lose your job. So think about that. We have extremely high inflation still, and you have a lot of tenants that maybe have a good deal that they're not going to move right now because they're going to wait and see, what's going to happen with the economy, what's going to happen with their job. And people that were maybe thinking about moving to a nicer rental or, moving somewhere else that they would prefer to be in will probably not be doing that because, security right now is probably top of mind for most people. And when you have a good thing going on, why risk it for something new when the future is uncertain? That's pretty much what a lot of people are going to start thinking. Zumper is anticipating that as the recession gets deeper, you're going to see occupancy rates falling and rent prices falling as well, because migration will start slowing down as less people are willing to take the chance to move somewhere different or move up to a nicer place. We're about to see 420,000 new apartments in the US market, a 50-year high for multifamily construction, guys. So what happened to this notion of we have an inventory shortage? Remember that? Remember everybody was saying that we have an inventory shortage for everything, rentals and, buying houses? It's not true, guys. We have a ton of inventory coming on the market here, and 420,000 units just this year alone is a lot of new units to hit the market in just 1 year. So when you combine that many new rental units coming online with the fact that more people are starting to consolidate households, then I think that's just going to be the next thing that's going to bring rental prices down nationwide. Are they going to go back to pre-pandemic levels? I don't know, guys. Maybe not. It really depends on so many different things. But everyone should just be happy that it's starting to change for the better now. I think that's what a lot of people should be looking at. And this is not great news for landlords, like I mentioned earlier. And I think it makes investing in real estate pretty risky right now. So that's one reason that I just want to wait it out myself and just keep saving money and wait for prices to go lower, wait for lower interest rates eventually, or maybe the rates will stay the same. And then, at least you're getting a lower purchase price. When we're talking to tenants here, this is your chance, guys, to fight back. Like if you are tired of getting screwed over with high rent prices, or maybe you are a high income earner for your family, now is a great time for all types of households to start looking at consolidating to save the most money possible. And if you are a high income earner that can afford to do this for your family, just make sure you can afford the house by yourself without the help of your family. And you're doing this to help everyone, including yourself, by lowering the cost of living for everybody. But just don't get in a situation where you buy a house that you can only afford if you have 5 people living there. And I'm also not saying to go out and buy a house. This more applies to anyone that already owns a large house like these places you see around me, where you could easily have a couple people move in and help contribute. Check this out, guys. How cool is that? I don't know what that's supposed to be, but it's super cool. Nice. Now, one thing I wanted to follow up on real quick is a couple of months ago, we talked about a potential rent control law being passed in the Orlando area in Florida. And fast forward to today, an appeals court in Florida turned this down. They basically said that the only way that a city in Florida or a county in Florida, whatever, would be allowed to implement rent control laws is if it meets a couple different criteria points. One of them being that it needs to be an emergency. And there's no set definition for emergency, but they're saying an emergency would be a sudden or unexpected event creating a temporary condition necessitating immediate or quick action. That's what they're defining as an emergency. And even if it was considered an emergency with the rent prices going up, Florida state law requires that the situation be so grave as to constitute a serious menace to the general public. Long story short, if we're looking at the Florida courts turning down rent control, and these are the reasons being cited that they turned them down, I think it's pretty safe to say that we'll probably never see rent control laws on the books here in Florida. And if we do, it ain't gonna be anytime soon. So anyone who's looking to move to Florida in the new year or the near future, don't count on you being saved by rent control laws here. So be looking at what prices are, make sure you can afford it. And even if rental prices come down, which I think they will, we don't know by how much. So you got to make sure you can afford what it costs right now. If it goes down, great. But anyone that was hoping for rent control laws to get passed in Florida, it's not gonna happen, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the bell notification. That way YouTube will alert you every time I put out a new upload. And if you don't wanna wait for that, check out my next video on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.